and I appreciate the opportunity. As you know, it's important to us at the Chamber to have an open line of communication with the administration and with City Council so that what it is that we're working on, particularly as we're working to support our businesses through this difficult pandemic. And so I sent you an outline, and I'm going to try to just hit the high points here because I know that you have a number of citizens that are eager to speak with you as well, and you have very serious issues before you. So I'm just going to jump right into my meeting packet. Council President, are you okay? I'm not sure what the Zoom etiquette is here, but are you okay if I share my screen? I don't know if I need to ask for permission.
No, please do.
Okay. All right, thanks.
We need all the help we can get too, but okay. Thank you. We do have some literature in front of us, but you're more than welcome to share your screen.
Okay, sure. So I'm just going to quickly go through this update. So as I shared in a little bit more detail here, our team has been working on what we're calling Erie Restart. So that's really an effort to pull together some community leaders to understand the challenges our businesses are facing in this difficult time and combine our collective resources to help them, weather these challenges. And so and I've included in this packet the listing of the task force as well as some subcommittees. Me in particular, I'm working on a government affairs committee, and we're working on some different policies that we think can help our businesses as we're moving forward. So once those are final, I'd be glad to share those with you. But I know, one thing that's come up already that you all have been working on is with particularly our downtown restaurants, and how can they expand some seating space for outdoor seating so they can continue to stay open in this time. And so we're also, another issues we're looking into is access to capital. Specifically, we've started talking much more seriously, I think, about, minority business fund and also some workforce challenges. So trying to understand, what barriers employees might have in coming back to work, whether it's daycare, transportation, perhaps they're worried about their children going back to school in the fall. All of these things are things that we're working to address, and I look forward to sharing with you some progress on action that we're taking on that in the coming months. We're continuing to do business outreach with our businesses. We've done a couple different rounds of surveying. We've touched over, had over 2,000 different touch points with our businesses. So not only are our whole team is calling our members directly, and we've called each one of our members twice now. But we've also held a series of virtual town halls, trying to collect information from them, understanding, do they have the appropriate safety equipment? What workforce issues are they facing? When it comes to capital, what's a good capital tool? Is it a forgivable loan? Is it a tax credit? All of these things we're trying to understand so we can make recommendations to our partners that are crafting policy to help address these issues. Just a couple other things quickly. We've also, way back, March seems like such a long time ago, but it really wasn't. But way back then, we started putting out a daily brief, which is really aimed at sharing legislative or developments on the government front, both at a federal, state, and local level. The daily newsletter, anyone can subscribe to. You don't have to be a member to sign up for that. We also have a resource page on our website that businesses can go to, and we've been very diligent about updating that with the latest guidance from the health department, both state and county. I will tell you, and I'm aware, that I'm public here, but we are expecting very soon an opportunity zone investment announcement. So stay tuned for that. We could talk more about that, but we're very, excited. That's sort of some normal news. I guess some non-COVID related news that we're happy to share and excited about. And then, we're of course adjusting our events in August. And we did have a golf outing planned for May. We're switching that to August. So that will take place in Erie Homecoming. You'll recall last year we had about 300 people in person at that event. This year's event is going to be virtual. So we're trying to find some creative ways of still engaging an audience for that. And you'll recall last year's event was really focused around opportunity zones. And we're hoping that this year we can be able to tell the story of after all the work that we've done over the past year, some positive stories and news of positive investment happening here. And finally, I just wanted to share too, I hope about 3 weeks ago, I sent out to all of our elected officials our workforce delivery system analysis that was done by Gartner Economics. And if you'll recall, about a year or so ago, we rolled out a target industry analysis that was also done by this firm. So this workforce delivery analysis really took a look at, okay, now that we understand sort of our target industries and the kinds of businesses that we're poised to attract and grow here, what are some of the disconnects in the workforce delivery system? And of course, one of the primary recommendations in that report was a bricks and mortar community college. So we continue to be supportive of that effort, and we're very grateful, Mayor and City Council members for all of your work that you've done on that. And I know this has been going on for much longer than I've been in this role, and many years of hard work to get us to this point of the vote with the State Board of Education. And so we continue to be supportive and look forward to being your partner as our elected officials sort of lead that charge and bring that to fruition. So with that, I'll take any questions, but of course want to be respectful of your time and understand you have some very full agenda items this evening. So thank you. Thanks for your time today.
Well, thank you, Amy.
Amy, this is Liz. I have one more observation than a question.
Sure.
This is great information that you provided us. And I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned that you're working on a minority business fund. I think that we really need to look at everything through a lens of equity now and balance. And one of the things I noticed, and this is just a reflection of the way things are in Erie. I believe that there are 30, and I noticed that the committees, I think, are a little bit better, but the task force, I think I counted 36 members, and I believe there are 3 people of color. It looks like that, there's a New American from, I don't know if it's the International Institute. I counted 7 women of the 36 members. I'm pointing this out because I really think now is the opportunity to say, if we don't have more minority business owners on there, or that we can turn to, why is that? And again, it's not a criticism, but I think I have talked over and over again about having better reflection on the boards and authorities that City Council is in charge of in terms of reflecting our community. So, I mean, maybe I did my count wrong, but I just think that from now going forward, we need to be looking at, and it's not a question of like just trying to fulfill numbers, but are we as inclusive as possible? So, but again, I thank you for reaching out to us. You've made a commitment to I think, talk to us, I believe, every month. And I thank you for your support for the community college too, because I think things are going to start to really gel for Erie with that component there. So thank you.
Sure. I appreciate your feedback, and we've been having some very serious conversations internally, and all that feedback is always welcome. So thank you for that.
Anybody else have any questions from council? I don't know if they even heard me. Any other questions from council? Amy, once again, we appreciate your coming in. We like the idea of being informed. It got a little, we're a little month behind, maybe possibly because of the COVID, but we look to hearing from you in the future as well. But thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, Amy, thank you. Council, is there anything else on the agenda that anybody would like to discuss? Rose, I didn't sign anything. I think you had something for me to sign. All right, there was something up here that disappeared. See, I got.
You disappeared, Jim.
Did I again? Well, you'll have that. That's the plan. We'll blame the phone. We'll blame technology. We'll do something. I think we're actually, we can start on time then. I believe it's 7:30, so we'll get our council meeting started. Oh, okay. We'll get our council meeting started again. We muted now?
Am I muted or?
Are you muted? I don't know, or I was muted when I said it. But.
Mr. President,
Yes.
before we get started, can I just send out a reminder to the folks watching that
You may be muted, Ed. Ed, you're muted.
I'm muted too?
Yep.
Unmute.
I can
How's
hear
that?
it.
Okay. Just want to make sure that folks are aware of on to help the zoo. They can go till I think you have a half an hour to go. But if you can, spend some money because whatever we give them, they're going to get a share back from Mr. Bachelor in the community. So 8 o'clock WQLN is showing it. Sean is one of the guys doing it, I guess. But it's a great cause. The zoo is a beautiful place, especially if we never get it open. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, you're muted, Jim. Vice President, take over.
Oh, looks like there's something wrong with Jim's phone or.
Sorry.
Jeff, Mr. Witherspoon.
You have to say all that over again, you're muted.
Oh. Okay.
I think I completely off.
Okay, so we'll go this way. Okay, Jim, you'll just have to speak up.
I have no problem.
Okay, roll call for the city council meeting of June 17th, 2020 at 7:30 PM. Mr. Winarski, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Shuff, Mr. Witherspoon. Please rise for a moment of silent meditation and pledge of allegiance.
Mr. President, I'd like to have a moment of silence for the late George Floyd.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge
allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes from the city council meeting of June 3rd, 2020, and payment of bills on June 12th and 19th, 2020. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski.
believe we will not, we were scheduled to have some repository sales this evening. We did not get the total information and documents that went with it, so I believe we are not going to have any repository sales this evening. With that being said, that will bring us to citizens to be heard. I just want everybody to know, definitely appreciate all the comments and concerns. There is 5 minutes to speak. Please, after you speak,
This is going to the registration. You just read the names off if they're here. I'll give them 30 seconds. And if they're not
can you
here,
still hear me?
Okay, no problem.
You still hear me when I'm speaking? Back to where I was, I apologize. Please, after you do speak, we ask that we don't get into the chat room type atmosphere or because it isn't fair to the following people that are to speak. We appreciate your cooperation in that. Once again, we have 5 minutes, and unfortunately, you cannot speak 3 and pass any time on to a following speaker. So please, if you would, abide by the rules, and I thank you. With that, we can start our citizens to be heard.
Okay, Randy Barnes.
I have 2 phone numbers. I'm not sure. I'm going to bring them in one at a time. If they're not Randy Barnes, then you'll have to wait. 323-0055. Can you tell me what your name is?
Hey, Frank, it's Chris. I'm just checking in case there's any questions on agenda.
Thank you.
Winarski. Hello, President Winarski. Can you hear me?
Is this Randy Barnes?
Yeah, this is Randy Barnes. I was just unmuted, President Winarski, Council. Thank you for this opportunity this evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Hey, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but as far back when Ruby Jenkinson's husband was on council, I sided with her, and I thought it would be really good to have some type of a citizens council, and I think it more of a citizen safety council that the citizens can learn and talk to the safety officers in the community. That would be the fire, the police, and maybe the EMTs. So I look at it more of a safety council, or you pick out the words. I just don't like the word review. I just don't think that's what we need to be doing. We need to learn to communicate and have a council of people that can, again, learn to communicate a little bit with each other. So wanted to bring that up first of all. And I wanted to just talk a little bit more about, I read an article in the Erie Reader, and it was talking about the protester. And I want to read a couple things about this person out of the Erie Reader, because I was not aware until I saw the Erie Reader that this young lady got maced twice. She got maced, and she said, in the Erie Reader, she said, I got maced the first time, and it wasn't bad. Because I was standing, I ran off, got some water, and was ready to go. So I want to talk about a person that gets maced, runs off, gets some water, comes back and says she's ready to go. Now, if you're a police officer and you just blew some of the taxpayers' money macing this person to get them out of the way because there's people north on State Street, they're trying to set buildings on fire and break windows, this person gets maced and comes back to the cops and say, is that all you got? Mace me again. So I don't think I want to make this protester out to be a hero. Now, I agree she has a First Amendment right to protest. She does not have the First Amendment right to disobey the officers. And she said right in the article on TV, she was disobeying the officers. She is not a hero in my book. When she started disobeying the officers, she was no longer a hero, and got maced twice, and then runs off the first time, says, I'm getting some water, I'm ready to go. How many of those officers do you think that day at lunchtime were having dinner with their families knew that in less than 12 hours, if they didn't have shields over their eyes, they could be permanently blinded because the citizens they're sworn to protect were going to be throwing fireworks and M80s at them? They could have lost their eyesight. Do you think any one of those officers signed up for that, or their family signed up for that? Because we all have to work this out, and we have to find out these police officers that are bad cops. We know this guy in Minnesota tortured that man for 8 minutes and murdered him. Those aren't the kind of officers who walk in the street every day. Again, these officers were well within their rights to get them out of the way. They have the Richford Arms. Hundreds of people live in there. That apartment building is at risk. Those officers, I think, are to be commended. And I realize that, how would you feel that every day, if you knew you put your uniform on for work, that just because you wore that uniform, people that don't even know your name, it's like I don't even want to say it, because that's what's going on across this country. And I think the first people we call when we have a problem are the police, and they come and running toward us when we need help. But I want to say about police brutality. I think all of us have read examples. We know people have been bloodied, beaten, batoned, crippled, and dead because of police brutality. When we call this police brutality, that this young girl got pushed over with an officer's foot, it diminishes the meaning of police brutality. That if that was police brutality on a scale of 1 to 10, it was about a 0.4. So in closing, I want to say thank you for your time. I'm disappointed, though, that this girl has not been charged. She admitted she disobeyed the officers. She used the taxpayers' money to get maced, and then come back. She said, oh, what the heck? I'm ready for more. I'm ready for more mace. Mace me again, because my mission is so important to hold you officers up. I'm willing to take mace in the face twice, because the people I'm protecting, I'm running interference for, are north of me. They're trying to destroy downtown Erie. So mace me again, because I'm ready for it. That's what I read. When someone gets maced once and they come back for more. Hey, thank you very much, Council President, Council members. I know you've got difficult things to do, and this is just one of them. But I think we can work through this. I think we need to learn to communicate, and communicate. Hey, thank you very much.
Janessa Williams.
Mr. Barnes?
I have his address.
Wait.
Janessa Williams.
Please state name.
Janessa Williams. Leanna Naradko.
Also not.
Penny Haynes. Penny Haynes. Cole Shenley.
Bring him in.
Cole, if you could unmute your microphone.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now? I'm here.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I live at 615 Ohio.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Sorry. I live at 615 Ohio Street in Erie, PA. And I wanted to thank the council for looking into like a citizens review board and some of the reforms that you have all been talking about. I really appreciate that. I'll keep this short. I really just wanted to express my disappointment in this the 3-day suspension for this officer. We should know his name. At the very least, he should have been put on administrative leave. And I think possibly he should be fired for kicking this young woman. I don't think this was a strong enough disciplinary action, especially considering as a veteran police officer, he's making probably, $80,000-$90,000 a year. It's really disappointing that there's no financial hardship that will happen to this man, that there's no real consequence. His life will not change for the worse because of this. I'm very disappointed in the mayor and the chief of police for how they responded. I think that they could have gotten ahead of this long before even the first protest happened. This didn't have to go this way, and it has, and I'm really disappointed in the leadership. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Lauren Laska.
Thank you, sir.
Lauren Laska. Courtney Mealy. Courtney Mealy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Courtney Mealy. I live at 3518 Oakwood Street in Erie. So Erie has a history of police violence, unequivocally. Over the last 3 decades, the Erie Times News has covered at least 22 accusations of violence, excessive force, misconduct, or racial profiling by the Erie Police Department against its citizens. Starting in 1991, when David Johnson died after an alleged scuffle with the Erie City Police, which is widely available just by searching Johnson versus Erie 1993. I'll just quote the Erie Times News on that topic. The city's insurance carrier eventually paid a $410,000 settlement to Johnson's family, and that settlement ended a federal civil rights lawsuit filed by Johnson's family over his death. Looking at the various other cases, which are admittedly limited to just what I found in my quick search, most have a common thread: the promise of an internal investigation and officers being cleared of wrongdoing. David Johnson's case in 1991, Marlene Adams in 2001, and the very recent Devon Tate Johnson case in December 2019 are all examples of Erie Police Department standing by the inappropriate actions of their officers. I'll also recommend that everybody go watch that video of Tate Johnson's arrest to get a better idea of what exactly the Erie Police Department are saying fall within their policies. These details of misconduct are all open to the public, taken from news databases freely available through the Erie County Public Library system. So I question, if that's what's available to the public through our news outlets, then what's being withheld and what's falling through the cracks of the laughably inadequate Office of Professional Standards, wherein the Erie Police are afforded the opportunity to investigate themselves and then clear themselves of all wrongdoing. Erie City Council, they definitely made the correct first step by approving and planning the purchase of body cameras to be worn by all officers, but that action is not enough on its own, as data has shown that just the act of wearing a body camera does not change the way in which police operate. Without the backing of strong policies meant to protect and hold accountable both officers and citizens, body cameras are merely an expensive and empty gesture. I would hope that in the coming weeks, the policies being developed around the use of body cameras are done so in conjunction with the community at large. Doing so will help the citizens of Erie regain some of their lost trust in the police over the last few decades. The next action in regaining our trust is the Citizens Review Board, which many of the city council members have recently come out in favor of. And for that, I thank you. But being in favor must be the first step toward the establishment of the following: 7 elected citizens with 2-year terms on this board, none of which are already on the board of other nonprofits. These 7 elected citizens should represent the Erie County citizens, not people who are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, who are in the pockets of our politicians, who clearly are not listening to what we want. So without this board, we can expect more and more decades of misconduct investigated by those who couldn't fix the issues before. Thank you.
Catherine White,
Thank you.
Freda Tepfer.
Okay, so thank you for this opportunity to talk to you, and I really appreciate the prior very articulate person who spoke. I'm going to talk about first the Perry Square Alliance. This is
Can you give your address, Freda?
Oh, well, since somebody else didn't give it last time, I will say I live in Southwest Erie.
Freda, can we please? Thank you.
I'm sorry, but
I'm going to say I agree with Freda. The very first speaker was from Harbor Creek, did not have to give his address. I don't think it's fair. We need either a policy of everybody giving their addresses or not.
We tried to get his address and he didn't hear
Well,
us.
too bad. Too bad.
Then
He is a perennial
here's how we're
council
going to do
speaker.
it. If we don't get an address, then we will not.
I will
Too
give
bad,
you
then
my
right, then
address.
we won't listen. Don't make this into another of your charades.
My God, it is unfair. He did not give his address last time. He didn't give it this time. He knows he has to give it.
Clean and
It's
simple.
not a requirement. It's just a practice.
Please restart my time now. I will give my address, but I will.
Please be polite.
I am.
And we're going. And please, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Freda, go ahead.
Please restart my time.
I did.
Freda Tepfer, under protest, my address is 1738 West 23rd Street, Erie. There's other people who did not give their addresses last time out of security. Anyway, so I am concerned about the continued functioning of the Perry Square Alliance. It's an exclusive group that does not allow the public to attend their meetings, and Kathy Schaaf can vouch for that. They have undue influence over Perry Square, and the city is providing free advertising of their very expensive fundraiser. Their fundraiser for their plantings, there is not one single native plant species in all of their plantings. They are a major obstacle to Perry Square becoming an actually people-friendly place, and I object to their undue influence and to the fact that they have closed-door meetings, that they are not open to the public. I support the formation of a police review board, one that has a meaningful charter and role and includes members from the community, representative members of the community. I think it's very important, and this has been going on, as Councilman Brennan can tell you, for a long time trying to establish this. There's a lot of places on your agenda which notes the funding of curb ramps. So I want to urge the city once again to ensure that during the installation, who's caulking in my background, please? That in the installation of these curb cuts, that the city ensure that they do it in such a way that they don't impair all four intersections for an excessive amount of time. No one curb cut should be impaired for more than a week. Even that's a lot. I do object to the city engaging a white male to do training, sensitivity, and cultural training for police officers. It's the same training already being offered for the police academy, so it's nothing new. Surely you can find somebody who can offer more appropriate training. I also want to emphasize that as we are looking at the Bayfront Parkway project, that it is an attempt by PennDOT to avoid to circumvent the process of cumulative effects of multiple projects. The viaduct, the East Side pedestrian work, the Buffalo Road project, the 12th Street project on the west side. This is a circumventing of the NEPA process in the city, and also the most recent sassafras extension. These should all be analyzed together. And lastly, I hope that the city has a more effective approach to enforcing their fireworks policies. People in this city and their animals should not be subjected to the kind of stress that they were last year, especially veterans and other people with PTSD. And I request that the city come up with a better process for enforcing their fireworks regulations. Thank you for your time.
Allison Kaminsky.
Jim's phone back.
Oh,
Thank you. Guess I can't be nice, I gotta be mean. So you gotta be mean.
Sure, well, what's going on?
Get trouble from the beginning, you know?
You'll be able to listen in real time, but I don't think we're getting video audio.
Okay, well, video's fine, or yeah, audio, video or audio? Audio. Sorry, council, we're technical difficulties, but Rose, can you go with the
Okay,
next citizen, please?
Allison Kaminsky.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. This is Allison Kaminsky, 411 Madison Avenue. I'd like to start and thank City Council members Brennan, Allen, Schaaf, and Keys for openly supporting establishing a Citizens Review Board. I'd like to see it unanimously supported, and I look forward to hearing your discussions through the meetings about that. I would hope for a sense of urgency with that matter, especially given the unfortunate lack of transparency regarding the investigation involving the officer kicking the young woman. I do have concerns and doubts on the timeline and commitment on Mayor Schember's side. I was most displeased with his inability to answer basic questions such as who was involved in the investigation and why aren't the police policies, specifically the use of force policy, unavailable to the public as a right to know, which I believe were questions in the press conference afterwards, where the answer simply was that he is not an attorney and didn't know. Those details and circumstances I would expect the most senior leader to have been directly involved in, or at least been very thoroughly briefed on. The lack of details does not feel like transparency, and it's quite alarming. If the answer to these questions is truly I don't know, it just sounds like a sleepy response and suggests a lack of involvement or engagement. And maybe incompetency, I'm not sure. It just feels like there is, again, a lack of urgency or something that is clouding the transparency, and I'd ask for that to improve. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Rose, we missed one. I'm gonna bring in Catherine White.
Okay. Catherine
Hi.
White.
Good
Hi there.
evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
The reason I called was I'd like to address the issue of the need for a clear policy.
Ms. White.
Name and
Could you
address.
please-
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Catherine White, 5722 East Avenue, 16504.
Thank you.
May I proceed?
Certainly, thank you.
Okay. I know this is something that Liz Allen has raised before. What I don't understand is what the current progress in trying to address the issue that there is a $35,129.27 unpaid bill. The city billed the campaign of Donald Trump on October 15th, 2018. What I don't know was, did he pay for security on August 12th when he was here in 2016? And are there other outstanding bills from other campaigns of either party? This isn't an issue of politics. This is an issue of how dare would anybody come to the city saying they care about us and then stiffing the city for a bill. The budget looks wonderful. I know that we are pinching pennies to do some amazing things, but any one of the programs in our city would have benefited by this money. They owe us this. So here's what I'd like us to consider in the policy, that any requests from anyone, if there are outstanding bills, those have to be paid in advance before anything could be scheduled. And if they schedule something because of if there's been a past track record of non-payment, there should be some kind of a bond, because if we're closing streets, they're mandating increased security, and there's overtime pay that's due for city workers that are assigned to the event and police officers. Why would we give anybody a free ride? If I park my car illegally, there will be a boot on it if I don't move it. If I don't pay my bills, I'm going to be hit with that bill. And I expect the city to take that seriously, because those are funds that the city needs, and someone's out there putting in time and resources to do what has to be done. So why chase down somebody's unpaid parking tickets when somebody has an unpaid $35,129.27? And so who can set up that policy? Because I see it as fiscal irresponsibility. When I read the past article from Erie Times News around that time, it basically said there wasn't much we could do about it. Well, we can going forward. We can say, please don't consider returning to our city till you've paid what you already owe, and up front, make a deposit. And for the sake of those who rent out their spaces, they should know that. They can't rent out space and then expect the city to have to figure out how to pay that bill. If they don't, they can go somewhere else. They can go to a football field somewhere else in the county. But I feel abused when I get stuck with a bill for someone who hasn't cared enough about our city to hit us with the cost of that. We're poor. I'm not ashamed of saying so, and we pitch pennies, but we do an amazing job. Please, let's figure out how to collect that debt. And if we can't, say no more to anybody who wants to hit us with that again. Thank you.
You, Ms. White.
Sydney Zimmerman. Sydney Zimmerman. Sydney Zimmerman.
You'll have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Have I done everything correctly? You can hear me instead of see me? We're all good?
Yes.
Okay, as you guys have stated already, my name is Sydney Zimmerman. I'll give my address, 413 West 9th Street, Erie, PA. In the future, I just would like to reference that our addresses are given at registration. And please let me know when I can proceed with my statement as well.
You can proceed, Ms. Zimmerman.
Thank you. So, where do I start? You know, I think that these interactions lately with our police force have just drawn attention to an issue that's been around. I know community members who have struggled with officers before when they shouldn't have had to, even if I haven't been affected personally. And so I think that this has called attention to where our budget goes. And I think that our city is in need at times, and those needs aren't always met. And we hear at times that it's because of money. And so I think that some of our money needs to be redirected to our community services, you know, and our community in general. So whether this means that it goes towards paying for more social workers, or it goes to paying more counselors in our schools. And I know you guys are in school board. Or whether that means it goes to more free health screenings in the city, or some, you know, any type of service that could help our community. New playgrounds. And just looking at how inflated the police budget is, there's room there. And I believe there's some community money that is going there that shouldn't have been directed there in the first place. And so I think that, you know, if we want to ask citizens, if we hear things being said to our citizens about, you know, they need to manage their money better. And this is a national thing more so. But I think then we have to have our governments be held accountable to a standard of such as well. So I think that starting there with some transparency would be good. And I'm so pleased to hear that city council members are in favor of a citizens review board, because I think their involvement in, you know, we don't need the whole playbook. That's not what we're looking for, but some community assistance in hiring practices would be good. In some knowing, you know, what the crime rates in certain areas are and why we see officers in certain areas so much. Things like that to better understand why money is going where it is and why our officers are acting in the manner that they are. So I hope y'all will consider that. Consider the fact that people are going to be asking about that. And they're going to be looking more. We're going to be watching more. And we're going to be reaching out to you guys more, because these are some really important issues, not just nationally, but here locally as well. And I think some of our community members are starting to realize how important it is for us to do our part and our piece and make sure that we stay engaged. You know, not just at our kids' schools, not just, you know, with our friends going and hanging out, but really getting engaged with the bodies that help to run these places, so that we can have a greater say and a greater understanding of why decisions are made, and hopefully bring our experience and our understanding to the table and have our input heard. Because if it's not going to be heard now, come re-election time, our voices will be heard. We're registering people to vote. People are interested in what's happening, and people are going to be held accountable on council and in the mayor's office. And that means that the appointees of those offices are going to be held accountable as well. So everybody plays a piece. Everybody has a role, no matter how big or how small. And I think you're going to see a lot more people playing their role. And I'm hoping to see people play it well. Is that, am I finished? Is that 5 minutes?
30 seconds.
Oh, okay. I don't need a warning, but thank you so much. In the future, if I could avoid that, I would appreciate it. So one last thing, not one native plant in a land area.
Ma'am, your time is up.
Thank you.
Tanya Riston. Tanya Riston. Time for a change on city council. That's what it says here. Time for a change on city council.
That's not a person, so move on.
Okay. Lee Williams. Lee Williams.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi there. Lee Williams, 1043 West 10th Street, Erie, PA, 16502. Basically, three things I'd like to share today. First of all, congratulations on the Erie County Community College. That was news and an event that was very appreciated to see here and participate in. Thank you for council's work on the side of that ultimately as well. And we look forward to Erie City Council and Erie County Council working together to make something good happen for our city and county. Secondarily, I am disappointed in the response to the officers' behavior with our protester downtown. Disappointed in the calling of the video, possibly as doctored, et cetera, first when it was out again on the news lines and on the news wires as a legit piece of the puzzle. Really seemed a sad state of affairs for our leadership to call into question sort of the humans involved right from Jump Street. And it didn't seem to get better as we progress through now to punishment. I would say I'm not sure what the right punishment ultimately is, but I do know there needs to be clearer and more transparent processes for public workers in terms of general public being able to understand the whys, wherefores, reasons for the penalties, reasons for lack of penalties, and the like. Certainly must be. Thus, to advocate, as several of you have already, and we have here in the city of Erie for quite a number of years, as I have learned over the last few weeks, strongly suggest a citizen review board be enacted as quickly and as rightly as possible. I think we're well past the time for discussing whether we need one or not. We really need to be at the place where it's more what are we going to put into place to help the city, county, and community feel safer, feel more able to control its own destiny as far as the authorities that police it ultimately go. I also would like to advocate once again. I know it was something that used to be policy, is no longer. I am not quite sure why it is no longer, but it seems to me Erie City police officers ought to live in the city in which they police, that there is no reason for them to live in another community. We'd like them to be citizens in the place in which they are the authority figures. And if they can't be an authority figure and a citizen at the same time, then they're either not very good citizens or not very good authority figures. And I'd like to think that we could get some folks that could measure up to be able to be on the high end of the scale for both of those things. Lastly, I'd just like to say, again, structural inequities have certainly existed in Erie City, Erie County, and this neck of northwestern Pennsylvania for quite some time. City Council has already been given some fairly potent tools relative to community benefit agreements to begin to address some of these structural inequalities. So while we speak to the need to address the inequalities that are part of the community relative to the authority and policing figures, we also should be engaged deeply, quickly, and with our money and our mouths and our bodies in reallocating some of the resources that are flowing through the city coffers or not flowing through the city coffers as some of the tax abatements and opportunity zone sort of projects are being put forward. Community benefit agreements are the place to begin to address those structural inequities. I hope council will take advantage of said agreements. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Keep doing good work.
Thank you, sir.
Tyler Veal. Elspeth Cayley.
Elspeth Cayley, 1146 West 23rd Street. The night of May 30th was the first time in Erie that protesters have ever been met by such militarized police. Neither the police nor the protesters were prepared or knew how to interact with one another. And as many people have said, I feel a bit dissatisfied by the disparity in punishment. The officer is going to lose 3 days work. Like Cole said, it's probably not going to hit him too hard financially. So there's really not much of a punishment. But then we have local charges being brought on some of our own community members, people who actually live here in the city. And I think in the unprecedented way that night occurred, that we should be taking a little bit more, have a little more leniency for our citizens, since we're having so much leniency for the policeman who kicked someone. I'm also thinking that there needs to be a restructuring of how police are recruited, where they're coming from, how their training goes. Do they all need to be firearm carrying officers, or can they be social workers? Fine, hire 10 more people onto the force, but have them trained and unarmed to de-escalate situations, or just deal with normal situations that people interact with police on, like getting pulled over. Have that person there to help that person get their registration renewed or change their tire or brake light. Don't have them there with a sidearm, making that person nervous, making themselves nervous, and then bad things happen. I mean, I don't know. I think it's not just about the police for me. It's about the entire systems of oppression that Erie exists in also, and that there needs to be a restructuring of a lot of these processes. And I'd really like to emphasize that the owner of Emperor and Forge echoed what a lot of people are saying, that property isn't as valuable as human lives. So if the city really wants to put its money where its mouth is, put some money redirected into social programs, reduce the charges for these young people that were doing property damage that night. And then, you know, I don't know. I'm super frustrated by the response from a lot of the administration. I'm sorry. But I think that we need to reimagine how things are done. I think that when young people run for office, that we need to support them, mentor them, and not discourage them. Sorry, no offense, Mr. Brennan, but recycle. Mr. Brzezinski, you know what I mean? Mr. Witherspoon, I'm sorry. You guys have been doing this for a while. You could step into mentorships and let young people have a voice and get some fresh ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paige Bosniak. Paige Bosniak. Melina Harden. Melina Harden. Art Leopold. Art Leopold.
Hello, I just got to unmute myself. Good evening, City Council, gentle persons, gentlemen. The ultimate tragedy.
Mr. Leopold, could you please name and address, please?
Art Leopold, 5341 Apple Grove Lane, Erie, PA, 16506. The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, the silence over that by the good people. Martin Luther King. I would submit we have a lot of good people in this country and in this town that are trying to speak up, trying not to be silent. And, you know, I would suggest that we ought to applaud, and I do applaud all the people that have spoken before me. They really spoke to a lot of the issues that I wanted to talk about. I'm certainly concerned about the young lady that got intentionally kicked down in Perry Square. And it makes me think that, boy, if we had a citizens review or advisory board, maybe we would have come out with some different pronouncements. Don't know, possibly. I also want to speak to the police use of force policies. I have given some city council people and the mayor some information. And I'm glad to see that it's been well received and that perhaps we will get some addendums to the police use of force. I also think we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary alerta, which was a good thing for businesses and hopefully for the city. we got to see a community reinvestment fund that was formed. I think that's a wonderful thing, but we don't know what happened to it. And I think it was supposed to be used for some community projects, maybe food desert areas, in particular neighborhood reinvestment. I look forward to seeing what happens with that. And my friend Lee Williams mentioned community benefit agreements. Just think what we would have now, a year later, with all the investment that we've seen, and thank God for it. Just think what we'd have now in our community benefit pool if we had, as a city, had adopted some community benefit agreements to put onto some of that construction. It would have been a wonderful thing. I thank you for your time this evening. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Martha Wachuku. Martha Wachuku. Martha
hear me?
Wachuku. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I clicked on the button and I did something there. I apologize, Frank. My name is Martha Wachuku. I live at 711 Myrtle Street. I just want to, before I talk about anything else, talk about how disappointed I am in the way that I have personally witnessed Liz Allen being talked to, in the way that when I have missed meetings, people call out that Liz Allen is talked to. And I won't even call them microaggressions because it's pretty blatant how the tone and the word choice you use to talk to her. And I just find it disrespectful, and it's telling if you can speak to a peer in that manner what you think about us when we speak to you. So I just really, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but I think publicly, the way that you speak to each other really sets the tone for the rest of us and really sets a tone for like how we as citizens feel like we're being heard in the community. And I think that speaks to the theme of like what is going on and how we feel about the responses that have been coming out of the city regarding the last few weeks. I mean, you can say time and time again, we see you and we hear you, but it's evident that the public is not being listened to. And that even within this meeting, we see that people are not being treated equally or listened to equally. And this council should be an example of what should be displayed for fair treatment. So I want to talk about how disappointed I am with what I read about coming out of the mayor's press conference on Monday. During college, I was a camp counselor, and had I kicked the camper for not listening to me or not moving, I would have been removed from my position, rightfully so. Not because it was something that was within my right to resolve the situation, but it's totally wrong. And I think what we saw on Monday communicated to me personally as a young Black woman that I am subject to excessive force, and I am subject to that excessive force being slapped on the hand if it were to ever happen to me or anyone I love. And in talking to community members, friends, family, we have all witnessed or had someone we love feel oppressed by police, whether it's being pulled out of their car unjustly or being surrounded by cops. Tell me why that at almost any time I see a police officer pull someone over, there's 5 other cops on the scene. That's a waste of resources for a community. So if we're about to hire potentially 10 more cops, why are they being hired? Are they going to be solving the need of officers being paid overtime? Because if that's the case, then that makes sense to me. How are they going to be trained differently than the people on force now? How are the people on force now being retrained? And I think we need to go beyond sensitivity training. I am trying to be sensitive to you right now, not cursing and acting crazy. That's not the training they need. They need anti-racist training. They need training on how to treat and act with the public. They need training to understand that not every person of color is a threat and that they have the right to kick people or do any other thing like that. And I think we can talk about banning chokeholds and all these other things, but as we saw with Eric Garner, some of these rules on the book, even when they're on the book, people are still harmed and die under these rules. So I agree with the creation of a citizens review board and auditing what actions and bad actors are going on in the police department. But I think we also need to investigate, like some other people said, how our budget is being used, why 10 officers are coming on at this time, how they're going to be trained, what resources are going where. Will this mean a decrease in overtime pay? How are they going to be trained differently? Because I feel like there's a lot of talking going on and we're being listened to, but we're not being heard. And I want this to be taken seriously. We all want this to be taken seriously, but that's not the feeling the community is getting. So going back to some points that some of my coworkers have brought up around community benefit agreements, I'm just going to use up my time. We have come years and years talking about the city and the people in underserved communities need resources to help uplift them when it comes to the education system, when it comes to unemployment. And those things address the inequities in our community before meeting an officer, before finding themselves on the wrong end of the law. Like, we need to invest in people before they find themselves on the wrong side of the line. And even so, why is it that certain people of color, certain people in general, when they find themselves in trouble, get a harsher punishment than others? Just as someone brought up, the officer kicking the young woman his name has not been given out publicly. Why is that? He was suspended for 3 days, and it's not clear to put the public like what happened with that process. So I'm getting a little riled up, and I actually just want to use the rest of my time to just sit quietly in silence for all the people who have found themselves brutalized or murdered by the police until my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorian Terry. Dorian Terry. Alyssa Stelmack. Alyssa Stelmack. Alyssa Stelmack.
She's showing up. She just hasn't unmuted. She's on
Alyssa
our screen.
Stelmack, please unmute. Alyssa, can you unmute?
There's a small microphone.
Left-hand corner of your screen on the bottom. She has left the conversation.
Gary Horton.
Gary is not on.
Nisi Davis. Nisi Davis.
Not on.
Hannah Kirby. Hannah Kirby.
Hello.
Yes, you're on.
Thank you. Hannah Kirby, 621 Poplar Street.
Thank you.
Good evening, council and mayor. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Last week, I had the opportunity to pose 4 questions to Mayor Schember, and I'd like to pose the same 4 questions to you tonight. We as a community and you as our leadership need to ask ourselves, are we asking our police to fulfill roles that are better suited to professionals in that specific field? Should we be less focused on militarization and more focused on diversifying our community investments so that we can address our community needs in a more precise way? Is it time we reconsider how we are funding our city and supporting our citizens? Do we supply the resources to create welcoming, vibrant neighborhoods, to create a world-class downtown and bayfront, or to create schools of excellence? More specifically, we as a community need a civilian review board as presented to the mayor by Janessa Williams from Erie Equal, a transparent evaluation of specific responsibilities we charge our city officers with and whether they should be transferred to certified professionals, and a transparent and detailed evaluation of the city budget as it pertains to enforcement versus the overwhelming needs of our community. I believe we as a community have a really unique opportunity right now. We have the opportunity to create something great and just for all of our citizens. We have the opportunity to be a model for other cities. We have an opportunity to make our city a world-class city. But that only happens when we are a community that is inclusive for all of our citizens, when we are a community that celebrates one another, and when we are a community that keeps every citizen safe. Erie is a large enough city that we have a beautiful and wonderful diversity, but we're also small enough that real change is manageable. We can make the change that people here tonight are asking for, and I urge you to listen, consider, and take action. I believe that Erie is a community of choice, and I choose to continue loving this community, and I choose to listen. We have a choice to move Erie toward an equitable community for all of her citizens. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Alicia Jones.
Hello, can you hear me?
Alicia.
Hello there.
Yes.
Hi, Alicia Jones, 830 East Fifth Street.
Hi there.
Hi. So I want to talk about a couple things. The first thing I would like to say is that I would like to see racism be called a public health crisis. According to statistics, Black women are 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy-related complications than white women. Black men are twice as likely to be killed by police as white men. The average life expectancy of African Americans is 4 years lower than the rest of the US population. By racism being called a public health crisis, it should spur on changes across all sectors of government, including criminal justice, education, healthcare, housing, transportation, budgets and taxes, economic development, and social services, with the goal of shrinking the gap between African Americans and white Americans. As you all know, a few years back, Erie was declared the worst place in America for African Americans. This past November, we were ranked number 15 as the worst place in America for African Americans. Some of the statistics, the unemployment rate for African Americans in Erie, Pennsylvania is 13, well, before COVID-19 was 13.5% versus the unemployment rate for whites being 5.8%. The median Black income household income in Erie is $23,074, which is $15,000 less than the median income of white people. Home ownership in Erie, Pennsylvania among African Americans is 29.3% versus 69.6% for white people. The mortality rate, Erie has one of the highest Black mortality rates than any city in the nation. The mortality rate for African Americans is 1,053 per 100,000 people versus 792 per 100,000 white people. And so Erie has a lot to do when it comes to race. Literally, in this city, being Black is killing us. And so I would like to see it declared racism become a public health crisis, not only for, I'm not just talking about police brutality. The systemic racism is across the board. My church, I'm a pastor, and literally when our church was buying our property, the city of Erie put a $10,000 tax on a in a building that is a non-taxable building just so that we would not be able to afford it. And then after we purchased the building, sent detectives to our homes because they did not want us in the neighborhood. We were marched on by the Ku Klux Klan. And so I say this because it is very much so systemic in this city, and so much has been done to cause this. So that's one point. My second point is I would like us to reconsider the ban on urban chickens, urban farming. We are in the middle of COVID-19. We are seeing food shortages in this country that we have not seen before. Food shortages, and this pandemic has affected the African-American community more than any other community. And it is time for us as a community to figure out how we're going to feed people, because we are facing food shortages and they're only getting worse. And we've got all through this city, we've got vacant lots that are doing nothing except people throwing trash in them. And there's no reason why some of those lots can't be farms, why some of those lots can't have chicken coops, so that we can combat the food shortage, the price of eggs, and all those things that have gone up. And I believe that it is in the best interest of this city and the poorer people in this city. We've got immigrants who came over here and were farmers in their homeland, and a piece of land that is doing absolutely nothing could begin to feed these families. And I believe that we should, and honestly, according to the article that I read about the ban on farm animals and the ban on chickens, the person who led the cause for banning chickens was because he didn't like immigrants, because he said immigrants were coming in.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
unfortunately, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you for calling in. Oh, she heard me.
And last name is OSB. Ann?
Yes, hello, this is Ann McCarthy, 638 East 22nd Street. I coordinate Benedictines for Peace. Thank you for having this public comment, for enabling the public comment section. I do want to add to the conversation about systemic racism in all of our systems and the structural changes that are needed in policing and public safety nationally and locally. Structural change and policy change is needed to address systemic issues. It's the only way to deal with them. I want to speak in support of the Citizen Review Board. We have had this conversation before. I think the last time it was around in 2010, when instead of a Citizen Review Board, there was a citizen complaint process that was instituted. I tried to use that once in 2012. It was completely ineffective. I never received an acknowledgement or an answer, nothing. I recently learned of someone who wanted to submit a complaint to start the process. I tried to find that form on the current city website. I couldn't find it. I sent a message to the city 5 days ago, have not received an answer about how to receive that form. So right now we have absolutely no way for a citizen to initiate a complaint. There's no system in place. And what we need is a process that includes accountability and involves the community in creating it and thinking about it. 2, lack of diversity on the police force. This has been a problem identified in our area, in our city, since, was it the 70s, or when the federal judge mandated hiring people of color and women? So far, that has been the only effective solution to the lack of diversity on the Erie City Police Force. What if we said, we will not hire one more person until we hire people, until people of color are hired? We won't hire one more officer. We need to pull together like we did for the Erie Community College and solve this. And then I'd like to remind us that we have resources in our community to add to this discussion. And some of them have been identified and are being used. But think about, for example, the Blue Coats. The Blue Coats who are skilled at de-escalation, skilled at decreasing violence, skilled at solving problems, skilled at reaching out person to person, identifying somebody who might be high and identifying somebody who might be a danger to somebody else. They have skills, include them in the solution. And the community policing at the John Horan Apartments. It's another, in my experience, is another good model of de-escalation, problem solving, decreasing violence, solving community problems together. Let's pull together in addressing this problem like we did for the Erie Community College. Let's celebrate that win. That's a structural change that's going to help us. We can do this. We need to solve the problem of systemic racial injustice in all of our systems, especially in the police. Thank you.
Thank you.
Spencer Myers. Spencer Myers.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Spencer Myers, 725 Chestnut Street. I first wanted to express solidarity with Hannah Silball, the young woman who was maced and kicked. I wanted to thank her for putting her body in danger in order to help affect real social change. Democracy relies on a lot more than just voting. Democracy relies on people like her, for sure. Throughout the council meeting, I heard that the mayor and other leaders have had conversations with local organizers about the Citizens Review Board. I want to thank you for that, and I'm glad that conversation is happening. I believe that as long as our tax dollars are funding the Erie Police Department, it needs to be more transparent. Otherwise, it's undemocratic. As it currently stands, we the public are not allowed to know about previous records of misconduct of officers. We're given very little justification for overtime pay, for new hires, for equipment budgets. And to top it all off, we're unable to hold officers who act unlawfully to account for their actions. I know there will have to be a lot more changes than just the creation of the board to remedy all of that, purposeful secrecy and the obstruction of justice that's happening. But I do hope that the board could work with the city council and the public to help us account for the $30 million bill that the police leave us with year after year. To make the process truly democratic, the board would have to be completely separate from the police. So no spouses or of officers, no retired officers, and it'd have to be separate from the police union, and it would need to be given enough power to stand up to them. Thank you for your time.
John Lyons.
He was here.
John Lyons.
He's not here anymore.
Janessa Williams.
Twice.
Janessa Williams.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I would like to say thank you to Frank. I know you guys called my name earlier. I was in a meeting. So thank you for letting me try again.
Okay.
Good evening to everyone. So I also want to say thank you to Hannah Kirby, who came on.
Could you give your name and address?
Janessa Williams, 4014 West 30th Street, Erie, PA 16506. Okay, so I'd like to start with police reform. Let's just start with Hannah. So the problem, we can talk all day about if what the cop is facing is what am I trying to say here? If what the officer is facing is fair, is basically what I'm trying to say. We don't need to have a conversation about that. What we need to have a conversation about is the police reform, the current policy that is put in place that allowed the officer to do that and not face consequences. So that's the big thing that needs to be addressed, because that's what's in current policy. Current policy right now allowed him to, as it was quoted, push Hannah with his foot. I mean, let's call a spade, it was a kick. And, you know, get away with it. So he was given 3 days, no pay, desk duty, and sensitivity training, which from sources, they've told me that the sensitivity training is only 4 hours long. It's held by, you know, a professor that works in ethics, which is, it's great in my opinion. And he also has to do other training, but it's only around 4 hours long, and the chief of police oversees that. So that's a problem. And in addition to that, as the mayor knows, the big thing that I'm campaigning for is a citizens review board. One of the things he said to me was, well, how is this going to get funded? Well, I would like to know how this additional training is going to be funded, considering that for the budget for training for police officers for 2020 was $78,000. Is this going to be an additional expense on top of that? Because that, if it is, or if it's part of that expense, I mean, $70,000 for a sensitivity training that they've already previously taken is a lot of money. So there's the funding right there. You know, a lot of people talk about, you know, defunding the police. Obviously, we're not talking about completely taking away all, you know, everything, all salaries and everything. We're just talking about redistributing the current expenses that are there, because they're getting paid a lot. So just going back into funding, you know, there's some funding for the Civilian Review Board that you can look into. And last thing on Hannah, again, not going to go back and forth about if it was fair or not, but let's talk about accountability. At the least, that girl deserves an apology. And that's just my own personal opinion. I will give, you know, you guys praise. I know that you're putting Tom Lennox in charge of recruiting African Americans for the next 2 years on the police force. You know, I see that initiative. I also know that body cameras are coming. Every single patrol car will have a camera. I appreciate that initiative. I think right now what, you know, the city of Erie is looking for is truly accountability. So for the remainder of my time, I would just like to talk about the Citizens Review Board. And when my time is up, just please let me know, because I did not start my own timer. So I would say about 2.5 weeks ago, I proposed my vision of a civilian review board to the mayor. And I also spoke with, you know, Michael Keys, I know you're on here, and a few other city council members just this past Tuesday. And we didn't get to talk a lot about it, so I'm going to talk about it now. So I envision that the purpose is an independent body composed of 7 Erie elected citizen representatives, which serve to investigate complaints by the public concerning violence, misconduct by police officers, and any other community issues, whatever those may be. The board will ensure that public complaints and disciplinary histories no longer fall through the cracks of internal affairs. In return, this will help install public trust and help the police department distinguish the good officers from the bad. So I know another person came on here and talked about the Erie's Office of Professional Standards. That's kind of already in place, was put in place many, many years ago. I brought it up to the mayor and he didn't even know about it. I don't think half the public knows about it, because the fact of the matter is the website hasn't been updated in several years. It features the old mayor, the old police chief, but that's just the tip of the iceberg for the problems. The other problems are that the Erie's Office of Professional Standards is in no way independent. The members of the Erie Bureau of Police can not only be appointed, but they can also be members of, you know, they can be head of the office. Lastly, there's no way for the public to know if something was adequately handled. So, you know, that was an argument. Well, there's something already in place. Well, half of Erie doesn't even know about that, and our mayor doesn't. So let's really try to get a civilian review board put in place. So I know a few of you have
thumbs up.
Okay, thank you for your
Thank
time.
you very much.
Madison Samler,
Not on.
Ethan Hayden. Ethan Hayden.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Sir.
Hi, my name is Dr. Ethan Hayden. I live at 2962 Willowwood Drive. Thank you all for allowing me to speak. I'd like to speak to the council this evening with regard to two issues: the press conference Mayor Schember and Chief Spizzarni gave on Monday, and the city's plans to hire additional police officers. With regard to the press conference, I will not take much time condemning Mayor Schember's decision to merely suspend the officer for 3 days and require sensitivity training, except to say I was incredibly disappointed in what amounted to, with all due respect, a lack of political and moral courage on the matter. I do not know how the mayor's administration expects to address racism and prejudice in Erie if they can't even stand up to the EPD. While the mayor said in his remarks that he did not want to apply a quote unquote short-term Band-Aid, I honestly can't think of another way to describe his decision. And while the decision itself was troubling, I'm perhaps more concerned with the transparency of the investigation. I wrote to most of you last week urging you to ensure the investigation was transparent. Councilwoman Schaaf even graciously took the time to speak with me via phone and assured me the investigation would in fact be transparent. However, we were left with very little new information after the mayor's press conference. We don't even know the name of the offending officer. Rather than building trust between officers and the community, such secrecy can only lead to greater distrust.
Yeah.
Perhaps even more troubling is the lack of public accountability with regard to the police department's policies and procedures. At the press conference, Chief Spizzarni claimed the officer's use of force was justified under current department policies and procedures. However, when the mayor was asked if these policies would be made public, he said they would not. How are we as citizens able to trust our police and hold them accountable when their very policies and procedures are kept secret? These policies should be made public and should be closely scrutinized and approved by the Citizens Review Board. It is an absurd proposition for the police to be the only ones aware of the details of their policies. And in circumstances where we as citizens suspect we are victims of police brutality, we have to trust the police to investigate themselves and tell us whether or not they violated their own secret rules. In what world is that democratic or transparent or just? At the press conference, Chief Spizzarni claimed the policies of the department break down into a progression of force that moves from the mere presence of a uniformed officer up to deadly force. Are we left to assume anything that falls within that infinite spectrum is fair game for the EPD? Without access to their policies, we have no choice. In a related topic, it's my understanding that the city has decided to hire 10 additional police officers. Respectfully, the city has no business hiring any more officers until there is greater transparency on the aforementioned issues. Even with greater transparency, it is clear from what we've seen in Erie and around the country in recent weeks that the police are fundamentally incapable of solving certain problems. Police training leans heavily on how to appropriately and effectively use force, but some problems cannot be solved with force. Indeed, a great many problems can only be exacerbated by force. Hiring more police officers in the wake of a police brutality incident will send the wrong message to our community. For this reason, Erie should take its lead from cities around the country who are making moves to reallocate funds away from policing and into programs that better ensure the physical safety and mental health of their citizens. I encourage the City Council to take this opportunity to reevaluate what public safety means in our city and begin moving funds away from policing towards mental health and other programs that more effectively create safe, mediated environments and reduce the need for violence against citizens. Rather than hiring new police, we should begin replacing patrol officers with psychologists, social workers, or others whose expertise and training are no doubt more useful in many of the situations patrol officers respond to. Doing so would reduce the burden on our police and allow the city access to a wider set of tools to address problems in our communities. We cannot keep hiring additional police and throwing good money after bad. We can be more creative than that. To close, I'd like to refer back to Monday's press conference. In his closing statement, PD liaison Michael Outlaw referred to the EPD and their, quote, God-given authority to protect and serve. With all due respect, we live in a democracy. The EPD's authority does not come from God. It comes from us as citizens. And if they are going to abuse that authority or use it against us in violence, then it is long past time that we revoke that authority or attenuate it by defunding the police. Thank you for your time.
She's not on. If there's any more citizens to be heard, please raise your hand using the box next to your name.
Frank, do you see that there's a Laura with her hand raised?
Yes. Laura?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Laura Rauschbausch. I'm at 532 West 6th Street. I'm calling over some concerns. I heard about an increase in suspicious packages in and around the city, particularly a couple weeks ago at the protest rally, the peaceful protest rally that we were at. While I understand the need for secrecy to prevent certain copycat actions, I do expect and want a full, thorough investigation as to why these increase in suspicious packages, including bombs and grenades, are being found and why this is even happening. People's children were at these events, and I'd like to echo some of the other sentiments that were made about how we need a citizens review board and we need to address the racism that's in Erie. And I'm sorry, this is my first time calling in, so I still have a lot to catch up on, but I'm very disappointed in certain things that were done. And especially I'd like to call out the fact that I want to hear more calls against white supremacy and against racism in our town. And if that is started from the Citizen Review Board, I'm all for it. And I'd like that accountability. Thank you.
Okay, we're good to go. We have any other citizens this evening? Hearing none, I believe we can move on with the agenda, Rose.
Okay.
Thank you all for calling in.
Ordinances for final passage. Council file number 16163, official ordinance number 19, 2020. An ordinance appropriating the sum of $247,500 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof, body worn camera program. By Mr. Brzezinski, second by Mr. Keys, the council filed ordinance bill number 16163, and now known as official file ordinance number 19-2020, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council passed official file ordinance number 19-2020 finally by a 7, nay 0. Council file number 16164, official ordinance number 20-2020. Appropriating the sum of $3,173,492 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and $5,000 program income for a total of $3,177,492 for the community block grant projects. By Ms. Shaw, seconded by Ms. Allen, that council file ordinance bill number 16164 and now known as official file ordinance number 20-2020 be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council passed official file ordinance number 20-2020 finally by a 7, nay 0. Council file 16165, official ordinance number 21-2020. An ordinance appropriating the sum of $831,284 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the home projects. By Ms. Shaw, second by Ms. Allen, the council file ordinance bill number 16165, and now known as official file ordinance number 21-2020, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 21-2020 finally by a 7, nay 0. Council file number 16166, official ordinance number 22-2020, appropriating the sum of $270,136 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Emergency Solutions Grant projects. By Mrs. Shaw, second by Ms. Allen, the council file ordinance bill number 16166, and now known as official file ordinance number 22-2020, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 22-2020 finally by a 7, nay 0. Council file 16167, ordinance number 23-2020. An ordinance appropriated the sum of $41,908.26 of program income generated through the Community Development Block Grant for the CDBG projects. By Mrs. Shaw, and second by Ms. Allen, the council file ordinance bill number 16167, and now known as official file ordinance number 23-2020, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 23-2020 finally by yeas 7, nays 0. Council file number 16168, official ordinance number 24-2020. An ordinance appropriated the sum of $10,992 of program income generated through the home program for the home projects. By Mrs. Shaw, second by Ms. Allen, the council file bill number 16168, and now known as official file ordinance number 24-2020, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official ordinance number 24-2020 finally by a 7, nay 0. Ordinances for first reading. Council file 16169, appropriating the sum of $166,436 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof, the 2020 Insurance Fraud Prevention Authority. By Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by Mr. Keys, the council file ordinance number 16169, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16169 by a 7, nays 0 on first reading. Council file 16170, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $112,694 from unappropriated and unanticipated revenue for the expenditure thereof. Contribution is from the Department of Justice Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program. By Mrs. Shaw, second by Ms. Allen, The council file ordinance number 16170. Having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16170 by a 7, nay 0 on first reading. I don't have any wires to trip on.
Thanks.
That'll take us to do business.
Yes, sir.
I have a separation.
We have a second.
Is there a
and
second?
Separation. We have a second, and do we have any separations regarding the balance of the agenda?
Yeah, number 4.
Under new business,
Yes.
no other separations. Moving the balance of the agenda, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. By Mrs. Shaw, seconded by Ms. Allen. Resolved by the council of the city of Erie that the mayor and other appropriate city officials are hereby authorized to submit a business plan and full application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Office of the Budget for a redevelopment assistance capital program grant in the amount of $3,500,000 to be utilized for the downtown revitalization streetscape project for new sidewalks, curbs, lighting, soil cells, and landscaping from French to Peach Street, 2nd Street to 12th Street. Further resolved that the city of Erie hereby designates the director of the city of Erie Department of Economic and Community Development and the city engineer as the officials to execute all documents and agreements for the city of Erie. Discussion?
Mr. Keys.
Well, I would first like to echo some of the concerns of some of our citizens about other agencies leading the charge for the revitalization of our own public spaces. And if we're gonna put the money up, then we should be the driving factor in the revitalization and streetscaping and the plans for these areas. And I also believe that the recap has a matching component to it. And I don't know if that's $3.5 million. I haven't seen it come across the budget yet, but I don't know if that's the best way we should be spending our money until we know if we're gonna have impact from the COVID-19 pandemic, and we know that our finances are in order. That's all.
No other comment?
Any other comments, council?
It's a grant.
I believe it's a grant. It's not a matching grant, just a grant.
Just a grant.
It's a grant.
Grant.
It's a grant.
Because we don't have 3.5. But
All right, roll call. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. This resolution will adopt 7-0. That will take us to committee reports, Mr. President.
thank you much. Ms. Shaw, any report this evening? You give us a report every day. And as council president, I want to thank you for your due diligence you do in giving us that report.
Thank you, Kathy.
Above and beyond, great job, and thank you. But another report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Winarski. I consider myself a public servant. So whatever I can do to help the community in any way is what I am here for. I am listening to you. Thank you very much for all the people who took the time and presented themselves today. I am thankful that you have committed yourself to the city. It's hard talking because I hear an echo.
There's a bit of an echo.
Okay. So thank you everyone who called, and I am listening and hope to
Okay. Have I been able to be heard at all? Okay, thank you. So we are living in unprecedented times. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and we will do our best, and I will do my best as a council person because I am listening and so many people are speaking. I know we have big issues. The issue I'm going to talk to you right now is about fireworks. We're having a PSA tomorrow. Thank you to the fire department and Frank Stramella, our media strategist. I'm getting a lot of calls, not only for the fireworks issues, but also the noise with motorcycles, loud music, loud cars. We've become a society of being very loud, and we need to address that everything we do is affecting other people. And so we have to be aware of our actions and what we do, because we are disturbing people's sleep schedules if they have to get up at a different time. We have pet owners having concerns about their pets. We have autistic people, people who have anxiety and depression, who are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, and babies, and a whole realm of things where loud things, like for instance, I have tinnitus. I've had it for years and it's not going away. So loud things just perpetuate my problem and I always have ringing in my ears that never goes away. And so I don't think people think sometimes that their actions, like setting off fireworks, are perhaps causing a problem, but they are. And even though you can buy fireworks in the city of Erie, it is against our legal. So please do not set off fireworks, even though they're fun to look at. They do cause problems and fires. I just got a call today from a woman whose barn had burned down because of fireworks. So please, 4th of July is coming up. And I'm asking the community to think twice, think of other people's safety. And that goes with things like if you're parking your car in a way that your neighbor doesn't want you for some reason, let's just try to be a little bit kinder. Thank you very much.
Hello, Mr. Witherspoon, you still with us? Good morning.
How do I unmute him?
Who?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. I
okay.
don't have my earphone.
Okay. First of all, I would like. Hello.
Hello.
You can hear me. Okay. First of all, I like to agree with Mr. Randy Barnes on a different name for this board, review board. I don't like to review as well. You know, it could be a council, it could be something other than review that tells me you aren't going to do anything till something happens. And so I think whenever we get to that point, you need to look at calling it something else. And in the long run, the name really don't matter. It's what transpires and how it's handled. I received communication from a young lady. Her last name is Paige. I don't want to mess up her first name. It's Nicci. Erieite. She worked as an attorney, a district attorney in Bronx, New York. She also worked in Brooklyn, and she's back in Erie. And she has offered her expertise in that area. And that's one of the areas that she had worked in for a while in Brooklyn and the Bronx. So she would be the first person that I would love to have her sit down with council and give us the first lead on how to do it, what type of folks we need in there that's going to represent the city. My suggestion is 10 would be too many. I'm looking at, my suggestion would be 5, no more than 7, because when you put too many people in there, everybody has their ideas and nothing gets done. And before we even put together, well, we better look at and see what can we do legally? What powers would that group have within the law, state and federal? So we have a lot of work to do before we just throw 7, 8, 9 people together and say review. They need to have some background of law. They need to know something about it. Yes, you can have community folks there, different folks, but everybody ain't going to be satisfied regardless of what we do. Another communication I received, a lady, I believe her name is Karen, she suggested that work with the county and the school district and putting one of the empty school buildings as a COVID site for individuals who have that disease and break it down. It's going to cost some money to do it, but I think it's a good idea. And I believe either Liz or Kathy or both have forwarded that communications to someone in the county. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much. What else? Well, that's about it. I think the group that we hope to put together, we need to think about it and make sure we're doing the right thing. Everybody has their opinion, and that's good. But as a group, as council, we have to take all the thoughts, dissect it. We'll take a little of this and a little of that and try to come up with the best solution we can. Regardless of what we come up with, guarantee you, everybody will not be satisfied. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple things. Attended the Erie Parking Authority board meeting this past week. Finances have improved a little bit with some things opening up. Their income is currently at 50%. Expenses are status quo, so they're moving forward. During the riot, 6 meters were replaced, had to be replaced due to damages, and they were replaced immediately Monday following. I did hear about the, and I think it was published in the paper that EDC is looking at a parking garage on West 5th and Peach, I believe is the location. I think they're talking about a possible construction date of 2021. And Chris Friday, the executive director, I just mentioned that he was asked to give his input on the garage and what he thought about the operation and so forth. So it's good that people are communicating on these things with future development. We did talk about their desire to continue to discuss the next brainstorming session with the city to discuss the approach to how to the best run the parking in the city. So I know we had a meeting months ago, and I think everyone's still discussing to try to get that back together again. There were some communications about the study sessions that I was trying to put together. I know we still need to confirm council's availability to finalize these. On July 2nd, we're looking at the Historic Preservation Task Force, and the 16th, the Young Year Professionals wanted to talk to council and share some information. So hopefully we'll get those confirmed soon and make sure council members can attend those. The discussions about the Citizens Review Board, I appreciate all the discussion, all the information that has been said so far. It's all great information that we need to answer. But definitely, this has been discussed in the past, but rejected for various reasons. I think it's critical that that this board, it is the responsibility of helping us to help build that trust that we continue to be hoping to build, increasing transparency, increasing accountability. So that would all be a positive to the city. But again, there's many questions, as Mr. Witherspoon noted, many questions will be answered first, about how this exactly can help our city, what form would it take, what resources would it be needed. So again, we need to do our due diligence and look at all these items to make sure we're doing what's best for the city and it's the best fit for a city. There's many other, I think there's about 150 type of similar review boards across the United States. So there's definitely, and each one of them probably runs a little bit differently. I think just as body cameras are an initiative to help with community relations, I think this would possibly help also to help inform the public and also to also help the officers do their job. In regards to a lot of the email messages we got, calls, text, I appreciate everyone that has called and communicated with us. It takes a lot of time to put together a letter. It takes a lot of time to make a call. So I appreciate it. Of course, I don't think we could answer the many emails that were sent to us, but I know I've kind of looked at some of the ones that were, it really pointed out something really unique about the situation, and I have tried to contact them to learn more, to gain from their perspective. We've received all these questions. I think I haven't been able to answer a lot of the questions about policies, about training, about a lot of these things. I feel like I should know that, and I'm just wondering if our liaison, Mr. Brzezinski, if he could check into that and see if we could find out more about this information, so that when a citizen constituent asks us, maybe we could, at least have some background or know of a resource to go to answer the question and answer the concern. That's my report. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Keys.
No report, just a comment that, that our city, is going through, unprecedented times in a lot of ways. We have a pandemic. We had the protests go awry, and we have systemic issues. And so my comment just was we have to become students of listening to one another, and we have to be dismissive just because their story is not our story.
Speaker's not on.
Oh, okay. So anyways, I was just saying that we are under unprecedented time. We have a pandemic, and we had the protests go awry, and several things going on all at the same time. And one of the things I'd just like to hone in on, that we have to become better listening to one another and not being dismissive of people just because their story isn't your story. We know within the context of America that there are really two different stories, and we should never be dismissive of the other people's story if we have no idea what it entails. And so that's really all I have to say, is just, being, to use the word of the week, what was it? Be more sensitive. We can all use some sensitivity training probably. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. Miss Allen.
Miss
Yeah.
Allen, you're up.
I attended the zoning hearing board last week. There were good questions and good answers about some of the requests for various zoning decisions. There is a variance for a rooming house in an area that hadn't been zoned for a rooming house at 138 West 26th. And the person who requested that showed that he also has another property in that area, historic looking buildings, and they've been used by professionals from Allegheny Health Network. There's also a gentleman who's starting a multicultural club on West 26th Street in the 1200 block. He talked to all the neighbors about it. One question asked about the club was why it would stay open until 3 a.m. And the proprietor responded that in a very respectful way, to point out that the other two social clubs in the area, the Knights of St. John and the Sacred Heart Ushers Club, both stay open until that hour. So I thought there was good communication there. Today, I attended the Facebook Live presentation by the Jefferson Educational Society about the proposed updates to the Bayfront Parkway. And the speaker from the Kent State Urban Design Group talked about using a variety of allies and champions to advocate for connectivity and access to between the neighborhoods and downtown and the Bayfront, and to focus on what can be achieved. Unlikely to go back and totally redo the Bayfront Parkway from scratch. It's already there, but to figure out how to use the large community voice that has been generated about this to make sure that things are done right with good design and with people in mind. Like a number of other people on council, I tried to respond to, I think I actually achieved at least a form email response to every person who emailed us and identified themselves as being from Erie. And when people had additional suggestions, I too made my email more than just a letter. I counted 126 emails from Erie residents about various police issues. I saved them all in a folder on Outlook, so we have that contact information. And I know that defund the police has become controversial and a buzzword, but after I saw all those subject lines, it reminded me that in the PFM report that we got about how to reshape Erie's finances, on page 86, in reference to the city's bargaining units, which includes the FOP, it says, to achieve the cost control that the city government needs to balance its budget, the city will have to negotiate changes that reduce expenditures below the levels projected in the baseline. The arbitration process requires a specialized set of skills and experience that external legal counsel can provide. So even though we are talking about policing and priorities in regard to systemic racism, we also have an opportunity to look at this based on the recommendation from the consultant that we entered into a contract with to help us make sure our finances are in shape going forward. I wanted to mention that the nuns on the bus who were here a couple of years ago are going to be nuns off the bus this year doing virtual events, and they may be trying to do a virtual event in Erie looking at some social justice projects that are being undertaken here. We got good news about the tennis program being able to proceed, even though we're still in the yellow phase. So I asked Dave Mulvihill about I wasn't even familiar with how many tennis courts there are in Erie, but there are operated by the city. Frontier and Burton Parks. There's also courts at Bayview, McKinley, and Nate Levy. And my suggestion would be the tennis lessons themselves are just taking place at Frontier and Burton Park. As I mentioned in our caucus, we need to be looking at everything when possible through an equity lens. And I'm wondering if there might be a way to offer lessons at some of these other parks, especially because kids won't be able to participate in Spoons League this summer. A few years ago, there was a doctor from Erie who asked for donations. This is Dr. Brian Stark, asked for donations of tennis rackets to take to refugee camp in Kenya. And I would think that there might be maybe a local effort to help kids, if they can't play basketball, or maybe they can't play baseball or softball, maybe they can learn to play tennis. I think this is especially important today when we just found out that the Arthur Ashe statue in Richmond was defaced with by someone who spray painted white supremacy on there. So I think there's a way to make Erie again be a leader in stepping up and doing what we can to make sure that kids have opportunities even amid COVID. I had asked the solicitor, also our solicitor, to update us on the Airbnb ordinance. I got a call from one of the people who has an Airbnb. She is not taking guests because of COVID, but will likely be reopening later. We had come to a consensus on that. I know we've been busy with a lot of other things, but we should get back and do our due diligence on that. And my last point is I learned so much from listening to citizens. And I know Kathy Schaff and I had heard from two young women at Barron sometime, I think it was about a year ago, Kathy, or maybe it was like back in the autumn. They had a group called Chicks for Erie. And they too were asking about chickens and urban farming. I think that Pastor Jones, when she mentioned that, that's a really innovative thing. We should be looking at it. You don't have to have roosters crowing, because we don't need roosters crowing along with fireworks and loud motorcycles, but you can have chickens to lay eggs, and other cities are doing this. And I thought that the way she tied that into food scarcity was really good. So I think that's something that we should look at. And the Chicks for Erie were willing to give us their expertise on that. That's my report.
Thank you, Miss Allen. Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if you're not unmuted.
I'm not unmuted again?
Again.
Well,
There. No, it was.
You got her. Oh, you had her.
Okay, I got you. Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank Ms. Schaaf. She did a nice job on that fireworks thing. Folks from Burton Avenue that called and complained, they probably complained to you too. And I told them that it's a heck of a situation, but it's going on all over town. I have a puppy that just gets terrified. First time he hears the bang, she's under the table. So I can understand where a lot of people are having trouble. So we're on it. What we can do is common sense, I guess. I'd like to thank Darren Hart from the fire department for taking care of a kind of a silly little burning situation. Sometimes, again, Ms. Schaaf said it, people do things without thinking about other people. But you can't openly burn in your backyard when your neighbor's window, even if the window's closed, the smoke is going to get there. That was a problem that was taken care of. Folks up on Ellen Drive, I talked to the chief about Walzak Park, and he's aware of some of the problems. We're going to try to give it a little more attention. Hopefully, that's been a problem for a lot of years, folks, a lot of years. Enough said with that. The urban farming thing. I don't know if people know it, but Pat Hart, who was a former athlete of mine at East High and also a administrator and teacher in the Erie School District, is actually doing urban farming on Newman. And he's trying to get another lot from, I can't remember, whoever owns it, there's a lien on it, but he's trying to expand what he's doing. Pretty interesting thing that he has going. I haven't seen it personally. I've driven by it, so I guess I've seen it personally, but I meant to get in touch with Pat and get over there and just see exactly what he's doing. No chickens, but food. He's raising all kinds of things that way. Mr. Brennan, we're definitely going to have a study session, but I think it might be a heck of a good idea to get the chief here, maybe the head of the FOP too, because everybody's got their opinion about a review board that can't be called a review board, which I agree with Mr. Spoon on. But we got to find out where we're going and how we got there. You know, a whole lot of things could be settled. I was kind of known for my little sayings with my kids when I had them at East High. And one of the things I talked about was rights and responsibilities. I will fight for every right for every person in this city. I will do that as long as they take the responsibility for the actions that they are part of. You know, if you lower your head, and I said this to other people before, if you lower your head to the back end of a donkey and you get kicked in the head, who are you going to blame? Don't put yourself in stupid situations. Don't shoot your mouth off until you know what you're talking about. That's all parts of rights and responsibilities. I've got the right to say anything I want to say, as long as I don't touch Mr. Winarski's nose when I say it. If I do that, I'm too far and I have to back off. So give that some thought. And this, you know, protester, rioter, that's going to come out when Denary makes a decision. I hope he has the guts to make. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski. Just want to thank council this evening for passing the ordinance for the body cams. It's been a long time coming for our community to the tune of $247,000, but people have to realize with that, that is grant money that covered that, but there is going to be an expense to the city. It's a 5-year plan that probably going to cost the city roughly $110,000 a year to operate. And with the technologies and the storage fees, I believe with talking to the chief today, I did talk to the chief of police just to try to get a little more information, and seeing the storage and the technologies that goes into these cameras, it is going to cost the city some money every year. So with that being said, I do believe we did go in the right direction there. We do have the dash cams. It does protect both our police officers, our citizens, and the city of Erie on the whole for possible future endeavors. But I want to thank council for moving forward on that. Another thing, I did speak with the mayor as well as our police chief. And David, don't get mad, but I think it's looking at our earliest time we can do a study session with the administration and our police chief is probably going to be the July 2nd date. So with that being said, I'm going to ask council to get any notes, ideas they have, get them ready for this study session. Naturally, our administration, they know where we are at as a council, possible options, whether it be a citizen review or however we want to term it. But just saying what all our options are moving forward in our police and citizen promotion and communication along with us as a council. So I do ask that everybody get their notes together on that. One citizen this evening, and may have even been two, did mention that you know, us as council, I don't care if we call it bickering a little bit or whatever you want to call it. You know, we are all in this together as a council, as an administration, and as a city. We need to set the example. You know, we don't have to agree on everything. Sometimes we don't have to agree on anything, but we still have to do what's right for this city. So I'm asking this council, our council, this administration, we have a job to do. We've been elected to do. Can't believe everything we hear from the outside, but please, we are a team. We don't have to agree all the time, but we need to work together. And if ever, now more than ever, you know, we are in trying times, not just one issue or two issues or three issues. We have a lot of things on our plate, and I'm just asking this council, let's do our due diligence that we were elected to do and work together. It's plain and simple. I want to thank everybody who called in tonight. We have some great concerns, and we want to help and be a part of the process, and that's what we're here for. So please keep them coming. Any suggestions? I want to apologize. My city cell phone, there was people that had called, and my response was, if they don't leave a message, I'm not going to respond. Well, come to find out, my voicemail was full. I apologize. I truly do. But I have taken care of that since. So with that being said, Mr. Schember, thanks for joining us this evening, Mayor. I don't know if you have any comments, but you're up.
Thank you, Chairman Narski. I do have a few things. I have 8, but most of them will be pretty quick. First, a couple of the citizens we heard talked about us hiring 10 additional police officers. I don't know where that information came from. I can tell you there's no plans to do that. The cost of that, there's no way we could pay for it. I also want to let you know, we used to have a weekly press conference at Stop with COVID-19, but my team and I are trying to kind of get back into a more normal routine now, and we plan to restart that next Thursday, June 25th. So we'll be doing a press conference. It'll probably be Zoomed this way, kind of, but we will be, just talking every week now about things we're doing and what we're working on. A lot of people have thanked Kathy Schaaf tonight, but there's one thing nobody thanked her for that I want to thank her for. And she is now providing water to the homeless in Erie. As you know, we have a large homeless population. She sets up water every morning. Yes, give her a round of applause. She sets up water every morning in Perry Square and takes it down at night. And Kathy, I really appreciate you doing that. And speaking of water, as you know, I've been working for quite a while on the Water Authority, trying to get a deal. That looks like the best route for us to go in terms of getting that, bunch of money to be able to pay down debt and help us finance and avoid tax increases for the foreseeable future. And with everything going on, what I need to do now is I need to get my thoughts back together on that. I'll be working with Paul Lichtenwalder on that. And then I've got to meet with Paul Wojtek and just kind of talk with him, talk it through and see what we can agree to. And I will get back to you as soon as possible on that as well. So we definitely want to act on that before, before rates start going back up, and then we borrow less money the higher rates are. I want to talk about COVID-19 a little bit. That is still a big problem, as you all know, especially in the city, especially in zip codes 16503 and 16504, and especially among African Americans in Erie County. African Americans make up about 12% of Erie County's population, but they make up 30% of diagnosed COVID-19 infections. The way that seems to be happening, and Hammett did a nice presentation. I don't know if any of you had a chance to see that, but on what's happening. What seems to happen is the kids don't wear masks, they don't socially distance, and they get COVID-19, and it has very little effect on them. Some of them don't even know they have a problem. Then they pass that when they're back home to their parents, to their grandparents, to their great-grandparents, and the official from Hammett told us the kids never even know they're sick. The parents usually get better. It's the grandparents and the great-grandparents that pass away from it because of the severe infections. So we've met with the African American concerned clergy, kind of explained this to them, and we are working with them to try to get the word out about how African Americans, especially the kids, can conduct themselves better to prevent the spread. Okay. Also, with regard to COVID-19, that's the most serious problem, but there's also I think some things we can learn from COVID-19. And like things like this Zoom meeting, I'm probably in like 5 or 6 of these a day now. They're so much more efficient than face-to-face meetings. You don't have the travel time, you don't have the kibitzing that goes on. So COVID-19 is a terrible thing. I wish we didn't have to go through it, but I'm trying to learn from it. And I can tell you the city staff is getting much more efficient and getting much more done with the remote, with having people working from home and that sort of thing. They're working around the clock. I got a text from Moss Salet tonight during the meeting telling me about something that he did for one of the citizens that spoke. He's working tonight, obviously. So I think we're trying to, once we get through this and we have a vaccine and a remedy for COVID-19, I want to learn and implement things that have worked well for us. Let's see. Okay. The last thing, I think this is the 8th thing I want to say, and I used to talk about LERTA all the time, and we were having a great year last year, beginning of this year, but as you'll recall, COVID-19 kind of put LERTA to a stop. And back on May 7th, we still only had about just under 29 million in new cases, or 124 permits issued for just under 29 million. And that's where we were in February. We had added maybe 250,000 from February to May 7th, which now I think I'd done a press conference that back on May 27th that we had 138 and we were up to 43,885,000, almost 44 million. And I'm proud to tell you that as of yesterday, we're up to 46,677,968, 151 cases. And we have 2 weeks until the 1-year anniversary. And as you know, the goal I always talked about was getting to at least 50 million in the first year in new construction and remodeling and additions to buildings. And I think we have a chance of getting there. It's 2 weeks from tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary. But I'm very pleased with how COVID-19 is coming back. And that's good news for Erie's future. And that's all I have. Thanks very much.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
would the July 2nd meeting be a good meeting to invite Attorney Page?
Oh, to the study session?
Yes.
No, I think right now I've just text David back and forth. We're going to reschedule that because I don't think we could have a dual. This is a little bigger than just.
Okay.
But to answer your question, Mel, even if she could give us 15 minutes of her time that evening, that'd be great, just to get some input.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Well, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it.
Okay, I'll remember that.
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you. Can you set it up, Mel?
Yes, I will.
All right, I
Yes, I will.
appreciate that. Anybody else have anything to say? Because I think we can call it a night. Thank you. We are going to end our meeting this evening.